I stood by the window, gazing at the orange hue of the evening sky. The world outside seemed calm and serene, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within me. My name is Alina, and I belonged to a family of wealth and status. My parents, proud and unyielding, had always ensured that I lived a life of privilege, but little did they know that privilege often came with a cage. It all began on a mundane summer afternoon. I was returning home from college when I saw him for the first time. Armin. He was helping my father arrange books in the library. He was young, probably in his mid-20s, with sun-kissed skin, dark brown eyes that carried stories, and a humility in his demeanor that was almost magnetic. My heart skipped a beat when his gaze met mine, and I quickly looked away, not understanding the strange flutter in my chest. Armin had been hired as a servant recently, though he hardly looked the part. There was an air of dignity about him, as if he was meant for more than what life had offered. Over the weeks, our paths began to cross more often. He worked tirelessly, from tending to the garden to managing household errands, and I found myself noticing the small things, the way his hands moved with precision, the quiet confidence in his voice, and the kindness in his smile when he spoke to the staff. One afternoon, while painting in the garden, I realized I had forgotten my brushes inside. Armin, who had been trimming the hedges nearby, noticed my frustration. "Miss Alina, can I help?" he asked, his voice polite yet warm. I hesitated, then nodded. "I need my brushes from the studio." He returned with them promptly, and as he handed them to me, our fingers brushed briefly. That small touch sent an inexplicable warmth through me. "Thank you," I murmured, looking away to hide my flushed cheeks. From that day, our interactions grew more frequent. At first, they were brief exchanges, him helping me with small tasks or me offering him water during long hours in the sun. Gradually, our conversations deepened. I learned that he was from a modest background, that he had dreams of becoming a writer, and that he had taken this job to support his younger siblings after their parents' death. "You're too kind-hearted for this world," I told him one evening as we stood under the old oak tree in the backyard. He smiled, his eyes holding mine for a moment too long. "And you, Miss Alina, are too generous to notice someone like me." His words stayed with me, haunting and sweet. It wasn't long before I admitted to myself what I had been denying. I was falling in love with him. But the real challenge began when my parents found out. It happened accidentally. My younger cousin, Sana, had overheard Armin and me talking late one evening and, in her naive curiosity, mentioned it to my mother. The storm that followed was inevitable. "Have you lost your mind, Alina?" my father roared, his face red with anger. "A servant? Have we raised you to disgrace our family like this?" My mother, though quieter, was no less stern. "You will stop this nonsense immediately, or we will find you a suitable match ourselves." Tears stung my eyes as I tried to defend myself. "He's not just a servant, Abu. He's kind, intelligent, and he makes me happy." My father's glare silenced me. "Happiness is fleeting. Respect and status are what matter in life." I was forbidden from seeing Armin. My father threatened to dismiss him if he ever spoke to me again. But love, I learned, was not so easily silenced. Late at night, I would sneak out to the garden, where Armin waited under the oak tree. Those stolen moments became our lifeline. We shared whispered dreams and unspoken fears, knowing that each meeting might be our last. "I should leave, Alina," he told me one night, his voice breaking. "Your family will never accept me, and I can't bear to see you hurt because of me." I clutched his hand, tears streaming down my face. "Don't say that, Armin. I can't lose you." For the first time, he pulled me into his arms. The world around us disappeared as I felt the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against mine. "I love you, Alina," he whispered, and I knew there was no turning back. The days that followed were filled with tension. My parents began arranging meetings with suitors, each one more unbearable than the last. I felt like a puppet, trapped in a performance I hadn't chosen. It was during one such meeting that I finally broke. The suitor, a wealthy businessman, was boasting about his accomplishments when he made a disparaging comment about people from lower classes. "Do you know what truly makes a person rich?" I asked, my voice trembling with suppressed anger. "Kindness, empathy, and love. Qualities you clearly lack. I stood up and walked out, leaving everyone stunned. That night, I made a decision. I packed a small bag, wrote a letter to my parents, and met Armin under the oak tree. "Are you ready to leave everything behind?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I nodded. "For you, I am." We left that night, uncertain of the future but certain of our love. We found shelter in a small town where Armin found work at a local library, and I started teaching art at a community center. Life was simple but fulfilling. Months passed, and despite the happiness we found in each other, a part of me longed for reconciliation with my family. I wrote letters to my parents, hoping they would understand, but there was no response. Then, one day, as I was returning home from the market, I saw a familiar car parked outside our modest house. My heart raced as I entered to find my parents sitting in our small living room. Armin stood nearby, his expression guarded. "Ami, Abu," I whispered, tears welling up. My mother rushed to me, pulling me into a tight embrace. "We've missed you so much, Alina." My father, though slower to soften, finally spoke. "I still don't approve of your choice, but if he makes you happy, who am I to stand in your way?" Relief and gratitude washed over me as I hugged him. From that day, life changed. My parents began visiting us often, growing fond of Armin as they saw the respect and love he had for me. Their pride melted into acceptance, and our once divided family found unity. Years later, as I watched our children play under the same oak tree where our love story began, I smiled at Armin. "We've come a long way," I said, taking his hand. He kissed my forehead, his eyes filled with the same love that had defied all odds. "And I'd choose this journey with you 1,000 times over." Our love, once forbidden, had become the foundation of a life filled with happiness and hope, a reminder that sometimes, the greatest barriers lead to the most beautiful stories.